Hello, I'm Bill LeMay, and thank you for watching Community Matters. We hope you'll continue to watch as we discuss issues facing our community and provide you with the resources and information needed to find solutions. Hello and welcome. In 1960, Clarence Henderson helped spark the civil rights movement when he sat at a whites-only lunch counter in Greensboro, North Carolina. That courageous act launched a lifetime of advocacy and leadership in the Black community. And joining us today is Clarence Henderson, author of Forgotten Courage. Mr. Henderson, thank you so much for a lot. You've accomplished a lot for a lot of people. It's wonderful to have you here. Man, where do I start with somebody like you? I mean, you go back to 1960, which was a long time ago. Could you first paint the picture what it was like for a black man in North Carolina at that time? Because I want people to understand what you did and how courageous it really was at that time.
Well, the environment I grew up in was quite different than it is right now, because I was seen as a second-class citizen, probably one step above slavery, basically because of the color of my skin. And so, having dealt with that growing up, having been called all kind of names, never went to an integrated school, got bused past white schools, go to the schools where blacks only went and lived in a black environment, living in a black neighborhood. So it's quite different than it is right now.
I read the intro, it was like, it was hard for me to, and I was there. I was in the 60s as a kid, and it's amazing what something so abnormal became normal. Now to think about going to a Woolworth's counter, now you weren't allowed to sit there, correct?
No, I was not.
Because of the color of your skin. What brought you to that point where you felt, I'm going to go do this?
Well, the environment actually, because it was the situation I grew up in, there were some specific things that are etched in my mind right now that I can remember. One, for example, I was riding my bicycle down the street on the sidewalk one day, and this white guy's approaching me. He never looks at me, and I get all the way as far as I can so that we don't collide. And then he starts to drift over. He knocks me off of my bicycle, keeps walking, and never looks at me. I can remember walking down the street being called all kinds of names and going through all kinds of situations simply because of the color of my skin, where the American opportunity was different from one race of people to another. And I can remember going to Woolworths with my mother when I was growing up, and seeing one downstairs and seeing two bathrooms, one saying color, one saying white, and seeing two water fountains, one saying color, one saying white, and wondering what the difference was as far as the water is concerned, because the water looked the same. The ironic thing about Woolworths was that everybody could shop the same way, except at the lunch counter, which was upstairs. We could buy food from the lunch counter, but we had to order to go. We couldn't sit down and eat and pay the same price, but if we went and bought any kind of merchandise in there, we could shop just like anybody else. So it was a big difference, really based on the color of your skin.
Well, when you decided to sit at the counter, what was going through your mind? You're walking in there, you're obviously thinking about it. This is probably going to be perceived as a negative. They're not going to pat you on your back at that moment. So what are you thinking about?
Well, one of the questions I've always been asked is that, was I afraid when I went in there on that particular day? But for me, I had grown up probably different from most people that went in there. We moved to Greensboro when I was about 4 or 5 years of age. And when you have young guys that come into a new neighborhood, the first thing they want to do is they want to test you and see where your mettle is. And so I had to defend myself just about every day going to school and coming back. So sitting at the lunch counter, I was not apprehensive or afraid. The thing that I looked at is that I don't know how I'm going to come out of here. Whether in a vertical position, in handcuffs, going to jail, and even in a prone position, going to the hospital, even worse, the morgue. So it changed my outlook on life, and I learned, it really taught me the value of life, started to teach me the value of life during that time.
Oh, I can imagine, but what made you do it? Did you just have enough? Did you want to affect change? Did you believe this was going to make a difference at that point in time?
Well, actually, no, what happened, and I think it was all God involved, because, see, on February 1st, 1960, there were 4 guys that went to the lunch counter, and all 4 of these guys lived on campus. And my family couldn't afford to have me be on campus, but one of the guys that was involved in it on the first day, a guy named Ezel Blair, what happened with him was that we grew up together. We started from the 1st grade all the way to A&T. And so he came down to Blueford Library, came down to the lounge and told me what had happened on the first day and asked me if I wanted to participate. And so during that time, all these things started to run through my mind of how we'd gone through these various things before. And the thing that he used on me, he says, now if they serve us, then I'll pay for your meal because I didn't have any money. One of the bottom lines is that he still owes me a meal because I never ate at the lunch counter.
It would be tough to eat, to be honest with you. You had, I just think it's fascinating when you're there, you're at the counter, right? And you were there a while. I mean, what was the atmosphere like around you? What were people saying, if they were saying anything at all?
Well, we were caught by surprise. We caught them by surprise initially. I can remember a policeman coming in on that first day and looking over at us and not saying anything and actually walked out. But later on, there were certain occurrences where people would call various names. Actually, it was 176 days of sitting at the lunch counter to stand up for freedom. And actually what happened was we had a bomb threat on one particular day, and then we had the KKK come in, and we still chose to sit there because we were determined that we were going to change the situation in America.
So you actually believed you would make a difference at that?
Oh, yes. See, what actually happened was that we had the opportunity to put Jim Crow on trial, and he was found guilty because we don't have Jim Crow in this country any longer.
I'm just so impressed sitting across from someone who is able to affect this kind. I mean, what you guys did, changed the direction of America in a big way. And think of the lives and the future generations that are better today because of you.
Yes.
Now, you wrote a book, and a documentary is coming out. I got to just be honest with you. I mean, as you sit here today, and 1960 was a while ago. Did you ever think we'd be where we're at today, and have things changed a great deal, more than you hoped, or we got a long way to go yet? I mean, what are your thoughts?
More than I hoped, because I didn't do it for the reason a lot of people think I did it for. I didn't know what have the impact that it has had during that time, and that picture has been shown throughout the world because it's an action picture, and it sees us sitting right in the midst of this, which could have been a very dangerous situation. And I want people to remember the courage that it took to do what we did, and the courage it takes right now to live in America to do the kind of things that we do.
Certainly you made a difference for, God, I can't even tell you how many people today would not be in the position they are in if it were not for you, Mr. Henderson. And we appreciate very much you hanging with us. We got another segment coming up, and we're going to talk about someone who helped you write the book. We got a documentary and some goals of yours and others about schools here in North Carolina. So stick around. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Joining our discussion with Clarence Henderson is Dr. Paul Brintley, an ambassador with the North Carolina Faith and Freedom Coalition and the senior pastor and founder of Christian Fellowship Assembly in Dallas, North Carolina. And to both of you, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's quite an honor to have both of you here. And let's start off a little bit with you and give us a little background on yourself and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so I am a pastor and an author, public speaker, and I just love this man. And I'm practically standing on his shoulders. I'm an entrepreneur, been in business, youngest Subway franchisee in the history of America back in '95. Someone has eclipsed my record since then, but I was inspired by his story, and so that's why I'm here today.
Well, you helped him write this book. What was that like working with Mr. Henderson and conveying your life into a book?
Yeah, so we were traveling around and at different events, I would hear him speak. And one day I went up to him and I was like, "Where's your book? Do you have a story?" And he's like, "No, they talked to me about it, but it's never happened." I said, "You're going to have a book." And so that's what inspired me to write the book.
Mr. Henderson, did you ever get to a point where you had that big event in your life, you changed history. Did you ever want to just go on and have a normal life, or did people keep tugging at you?
The latter part, people kept tugging after me, sort of like Jonah and the fish. Every time I tried to move away from it, I was always brought back into it. One time I left New York, I left Greensboro going to New York, so I'm never coming back. I was drawn back to New York, back to Greensboro, and that's why I wound up doing what I'm doing now.
Well, the book's appropriately named, I think, because I think you're right. There's some forgotten history that should never be forgotten, and that your story is one of them. Now, tell me about what the goal is about. I know it's already in schools here in North Carolina as a curriculum. How does that work, and why are you doing it?
Yeah, so we are able to take Mr. Henderson across the state right now to different schools and to tell his story. So we want the students to know the history more than just from a book or a story that they've heard. We want them to meet a living legend. So we're currently doing that.
What's it like for you to go into the school? And you know, it happened. You were a young man yourself in college.
Well, it's great to go back and talk to the kids, and we have such great interactions because they're able to ask questions about the history that I was involved in, as opposed to if they were reading out a book and they couldn't ask the question. And they become very excited.
I was going to ask, do they connect? I know nowadays, for them, they weren't even here, right? So it's hard for them, I would think, to kind of connect to it. But do they understand the importance of that event?
Well, I found that the kids are a lot smarter than they're given credit for. They only show them when they're doing something wrong, but they have questions about how I felt during that time, the emotions that I went through. Was anything I would change in reference to it? Just what was going on during that time?
Why, if I may ask, is why so many civil rights stories seem to have been forgotten? I certainly don't hear a lot of talk about it, and it's such a monumental period in our history. Anybody have how about you, Paul?
I think part of it's political. I think there's a narrative out there to brush over history. And I think it's important that we have history and we review it and go back so that we don't repeat it again. But there's a narrative out there to just, let's just glance over it. We can mention it, but we don't need to go into details of really what happened.
But it's such an important part of even dialogue today. When you mention political, it's still, the racism and the differences that we have as people are so highlighted, it seems, that this would be, I would think, an era that you would like to look at and really highlight and say, look what we can accomplish.
Well, so, a very great point that Paul made is that you have so many people that want to rewrite history according to how they think it should have gone, as opposed to how it really happened, when history should be told just like it was, the good, bad, and ugly, and let the people decide.
Well, that's important, right?
Because that's how you view America. How did America get to be where it is now versus where it was? And we don't know our history, that we're doomed to repeat it.
Well, I know not only the book, there's a documentary that has, in fact, you were going to have a premiere. And then the weather, well, here in North Carolina, if there's a snowflake in the forecast, forget about it, right? Yeah. So, but tell me about the documentary. And again, is this part of what's happening in our schools?
Well, I never anticipated the documentary, just writing the book. And so the book has now turned into a documentary. We're excited about it. It's telling his story, and it is going into the schools as well. And to be on TV and whatever the Lord wants for it, we're excited about that. But yeah, his story is now in a documentary form.
Well, and could you tell us just a little bit about the Freedom Coalition?
Yes.
And what that's all about?
So he is an ambassador to the Faith and Freedom Coalition, and that's how I met him on the road doing that. At the North Carolina Faith and Freedom Coalition, we're the largest voter education group in the state. And so we educate the voter on the candidate that has a biblical worldview. And so he was going around talking about that as well. And so the Faith and Freedom Coalition got behind the book, and they're behind the documentary.
Now, how can people help further this cause? Because I know you go to the schools, and the curriculum that you put in the schools, maybe you can talk a little bit about what that is specifically, and that all costs money.
Right, so I'll address the curriculum first of all. It's an 8th grade curriculum. We're taking it to the teachers and letting them see it as a mock trial. Chief Justice Newby inspired us to do that. So there's a mock trial version of it where the students can play Mr. Henderson. They can go to court and all of that and have lawyers and judges. And so that's great, but it also tells a story. And so the teachers can teach that either before we come to the school or after we leave the school. And so that's what the curriculum is about.
So for the people watching today, how can they help in this cause? Do you take donations? I mean, how do you get the money to do what it is you do? Because I'd like this guy to be in school every day. You up for it?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I bet you
Definitely
are.
so.
Yeah, so there's a couple of ways you can help financially. The book is one, buying his book. It's on Amazon, it's on our website. But he also has a foundation that I started called the Clarence Henderson Education Foundation, which is a C3. So any money that is donated to the foundation is tax deductible. So there's another way they can support his legacy.
Well, gentlemen, it truly is an honor. I don't get a chance to talk to people who actually change history. That's a remarkable individual, and for what you're both doing, I think we're blessed to have you guys on the planet. We really are. In fact, we're going to come back, but take a look at just a little bit of the documentary.
A century after the 13th Amendment abolished slavery in the nation, the shadow of racial inequality still hung heavy over the American South. In the years after Reconstruction, Southern legislators passed laws that hardened segregation and pushed Black Americans to the margins of daily life. These laws, known as Jim Crow, a name borrowed from a demeaning minstrel character of the 1800s, turned prejudice into policy and injustice into a way of life. Then on February 2nd, 1960, in Greensboro, North Carolina, 4 students from the North Carolina Agricultural and Technical College took a quiet but extraordinary stand. David Richmond, Franklin McCain, Billy Smith, and Clarence Henderson openly challenged the existing social order of segregation and ignited a movement that helped pave the way for the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Welcome back. The documentary, The Clarence Henderson Story, brings the words of Clarence Henderson off the page and onto the screen. And joining us now are the director and producer behind the documentary, John Potts and January Parker. To both of you, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Wow, this is one of those programs I'm in awe of everybody. You're an Emmy Award-winning, director and producer, and I could go on. You were Air Force and everything else, and you've become involved in all of this. And I got to ask why? How did this draw so many people to this story? What possessed you to get involved and make a documentary, John?
Well, for me, it was Clarence's story himself. From reading the book and understanding from his words what he lived at that time was very interesting to me, because it was a little bit different than the narrative that I grew up understanding from news articles and other books and publications. I thought, well, there's a slightly different story here than what I've been taught. So I dug into it a little deeper, and I thought, well, if I talk to the man that actually lived it and other people during that time to get a real perspective, or to get a real sense of their perspective at the time versus what the news media has shown me over the years, that there may be something there. And I think we did dig in a little bit on it.
Well, I can't wait to see it now. I know you guys it was going to be on your birthday initially, the debut of it, and that didn't happen. And that'll be coming up for folks to see soon, right? What's going on with that?
Yes, that was March 14th.
It's looking like March 14th, correct?
At the Dowd Theater in Monroe, North Carolina.
Okay.
And it's actually sponsored by the Union County GOP and pushed forward by State Representative David Willis. So there's some government or legislative interest in the story as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's a wonderful story. I mean, how would you? I'm not a guy who puts pictures together. I mean, that's an art form unto itself. How do you adapt a book with words into, the visual and the storytelling?
Well, for me, it was basically having the story, again, reading the book and having the story in my head, and then trying to bring that to video, if you will. And again, it's, from the most part, talking to these folks. And just a one-on-one, like you had an opportunity to sit with Clarence. I mean, it's intriguing
Amazing.
to listen to that man talk.
It is.
And when you get him off a camera, he says a lot more, and things that you really start to understand what was going on back in those days. And the thing that struck me most about it was both black and white people during that time, nobody knew any better. That's what they had grown up with. Mm-hmm. That's the way it was, at least in the South. Mm-hmm. And everybody accepted it. That's just the way it is. Come along folks like Clarence said, well, it doesn't have to be this way. So it wasn't like he felt oppressed. He just didn't feel like he was being accepted as a human being like you and I.
Sure.
And so rather than, again, the take I have from it, rather than him getting angry and bitter, he used his faith to push him forward, to speak out and say, hey, this isn't right. It wasn't him out marching in the streets and rioting and breaking windows, but he quietly went forward with his faith.
So from a producer standpoint, was that maybe the important message, or is there another message that you wanted to make sure people, once they watched it, took away from it?
Well, it's a great story, but one of the things that drew us to this story is it's an untold story. And when you look at history, the civil rights movement, but all history, but the civil rights movement in particular, we hear about the great leaders, Martin Luther King, and Alveda King is in our film, and she's amazing. But so we've heard a lot about her family and her father as well. But they're unsung, heroes. In the military, you don't win a war. The general doesn't win the war. It's the team effort. It's everybody involved. And so the civil rights movement was ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and maybe for just one moment in time, right? Not everybody was there for 176 days, every day protesting, but people played a role. And there's so many stories like that. And Clarence is one of them, because he didn't know. He's like, come sit at the counter. And he knew the risk. Everybody then, right? Fear breeds fear. Courage breeds courage. And he took courage, and he did something that his parents wouldn't have been okay with, because the older generation, they had so much to lose at that time. And so our message is, look what we can do. Look how far we've come. Look how far we have to go. And let's go forward and not backwards.
What surprised me was that I guess I would be bitter, because sometimes that's the story we get, right, today anyway. Mm-hmm. And he's not at all. You had mentioned that, John. I mean, was there anything that really surprised you after getting to know Mr. Henderson in the documentary?
Yeah, so there was quite a few things that surprised me. One in particular was Charles Bess is featured in the program. And everyone's probably seen it, it's on the front cover of the book, or the four students sitting there at the counter, that very iconic picture. Well, the gentleman in the background wearing the white paper hat is Charles Bess. He was the busboy that day. Oh. And we were able to sit down and talk with him. And what struck me is, hey, we haven't always been fed the overall or correct narrative of what was going on back then. Mm-hmm. But Charles was like one of those fellows that didn't really think anything was going wrong, because, again, he grew up with it and accepted the fact that there was segregation. Mm-hmm. But that when he talks about the manager of the Woolworths at the time, they were all friends. They would all, behind the scenes sit down and eat together, and they'd have Christmas parties together and just treated each other naturally. And history doesn't always tell us there was that part of it. Not every white man was evil, and not every black man was protesting to change things.
Or the white guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And that, and we talk about that in the we delve into that a little bit in the documentary of how there were really good race relations during that time, not just the bad stuff. And it took efforts like Clarence's to start making that change and people to understand. And you look at it today, it's like, in fact, there is a quote from Officer Tatum, I believe it is.
Brandon Tatum.
Brandon Tatum, who has a national YouTube channel. And he talks about, when they tell me there were separate water fountains, and black men, by the way, there were separate, I can't believe that.
Yeah.
I've never experienced that. What's that all about? So we have come a long way, and a lot of it has come from, and I'll bring it up again, men's faith, their faith in God, in doing the right thing. And I think it kind of helps propel it today.
Well, it certainly opened my eyes. I mean, he's an amazing guy, and you guys too, you know, I'll go with you. I know God has a way of working and putting the right people in the right room at the right time so often, and I think that's the case this time. So for the folks watching, you know, there's a book for you to read. You should read it, and certainly check out the documentary, which is coming up. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, thanks
Okay,
for
and thank
having
you
us.
for being here. And thank you for watching. We hope you've enjoyed today's show. If you have any questions or you'd like to know more, visit our website at RaleighCW.com and myrdctv.com. I'm Bill LeMay, and thank you for watching Community Matters, and we'll see you next week.